everybody. Thank you guys for being here as we continue our mission weekend. Thanks for everyone that came out last night to hear from Michelle from Choices, and thanks for bringing a huge amount of delicious food that some of us are still recovering from. But we thank you guys for coming here today, and we have the honor of getting to hear from Mark Michael. Some of you might know him. You might know his mom as well. She's pretty well liked around here. So Mark works for RUF. He is the Director of Innovation. Crew, why am I saying RUF? Getting my thing up. For Crew, very, very different. For Crew, it's the Director of Innovation. I'll allow him to spend some time speaking about that. I did want to really quick use the fact that I have the mic to give a quick, just something for y'all to think about. As we bring missionaries in to speak, and as we that our church supports, we as a church are incredibly blessed to be able to support quite a number of missionaries, and we're excited about the work that we get to do of supporting in prayer and financially some of these individuals. When we bring them here, it is to be a blessing to the congregation to get to hear from them. We want to bless Mark as well through this, but we also bring here because as a church, there's only so much, especially financially, we can do. But the need is always greater than what we as a church can provide. So as you listen to Mark and as you hear from the other missionaries, we want you guys to not just be here to learn, but also to see if the Lord might be leading you individually to support. Support for missionaries has changed a lot over the years. It used to be that the majority of support would come from churches. Like my dad. My dad had, when he would first join the mission field back in the 80s, he had about 40 churches that supported him. Whereas now you have my brothers who are missionaries. They have about between like 15 to 20 churches, and then they have a large number of individuals who help make up the remainder of their support. Support that it has changed a lot over the years, what that looks like. So as you hear from Mark, and whenever we bring missionaries, listen actively, and I would like for you guys to take the time to think, is the Lord leading me to support this individual personally? And I know Mark would love to talk to you guys about that. If that's something you feel the Lord is leading to you, and you hear from him as he explains his work and the incredible work that they're doing, just wanted to give that encouragement too. If you think, oh, this is something I'm excited about and I would like to be more engaged individually, talk to Mark and consider about supporting him financially, in prayer, and supporting the work of Crew. So anyways, that's all I wanted to say, and I'll turn it over to Mark. Thank you.
Let's hear it for Mark Michael. Well, hey guys. My name is Mark Michael, and you might know my mom. She's in the back, Barb Michael. She's amazing, as you all know. And I wanted this morning to tell you a story of, we're talking this it's a little awkward because they asked if I would come, and I said yes. And then they said, oh, you know what, we're going to do local missions this time. And I don't really do local missions. I'm more nationally. But it worked out that I'm going to be able to speak. And I do want to talk about local missions, though. And I'm going to start by telling the story of how I started doing ministry with teenagers. And through that, I'll talk a little bit about what I do, what Crew does, why it's so crucial that we reach teenagers today. And then we're going to actually look into Nehemiah a little bit, which has a pattern of ministry that I think speaks a little bit to local missions. And at the end, I want to give you a little application that you can do right now. Okay? So I grew up in the area. I went to Ridgeland High School. Anybody go to Ridgeland? Anybody? All right. I was the second graduating class at Ridgeland High School. And it was just as messed up then as it is now. I didn't know what I was going to do, with my life. I went to Covenant College, and that's where God really began. Covenant? Any Covenant students in here? Or one lone Covenant or two? I got a couple in the back. Okay. I know it's spring break, but alumni, Covenant alumni, bring it on, baby. So I learned a lot of Covenant. Covenant was really where God got a hold of my life. After my freshman year, and then God really used what I learned at Covenant to really solidify my faith that I'd grown up with, and it really solidified in my heart rather than just in my head. And I loved my time at Covenant. It was there that God called me into youth ministry, and I didn't know at the time what that meant. Does that mean just volunteer in the youth group? Does that mean a couple of years in youth ministry? It turned out it's meant so far 25 years in youth ministry. And I know I don't look that old. But I started pursuing, what does that look like? And so I want you to think about local missions in this, because the process I went through here is a lot of the process of how do I get involved in a ministry or in some kind of missions. And I said, God, what do you want me to do with my life or my time? And I wanted to reach out to teenagers. At the time, there was a different Dennis that was a pastor of the church here, and he was trying to launch some kind of high school ministry at the local school. And I'd never done that kind of work. Like, I'd worked in a youth group before, volunteering. But he wanted me to run the youth group here and do that there. And I'm like, let's give it a shot. And so I did that for it turned out to be about 5 years here at the church. And I ran the local ministry there, or the youth group here, and I reached out to the school there. Now, at Covenant, I learned a lot of things, a lot of good theology, good thinking, good Bible study methods. I didn't ever learn how to share my faith when I was at Covenant. And I came into here, and one of the things that attracted me about this ministry called Crew was that they go to the high schools and they share the gospel with teenagers. And I thought that was interesting. And so I really wanted to develop my own ability to share my faith. That was not something that I was at all comfortable with. I'd love a show of hands. Does anybody feel like they're not at all comfortable with sharing their faith? Does that throw some people off? Yeah, that was me. So I started in ministries. Actually, Josh Henry was the first guy I started working with. And we took a couple guys out to pizza, and we said, hey, we're going to start this little club called Crew, or called Student Venture back then. And a couple guys said yes. We started a Bible study. It grew. We kept doing some things. I met students. I would go to the school, and I would talk to students about, getting involved with Crew, and, students would invite their friends. So here we come to this point at the beginning of the school year, one of the school years, where we were going to do an outreach, the first big group outreach. And I had never shared the gospel again before in a group. And so we have a bunch of guys over at somebody's house, and there's about 30 kids there, and we have some pizza, we have games, we have all the youth group things, and then I'm supposed to share the gospel. And so again, never done this before. I'm really nervous. And so I have my notes, and what I end up doing is literally just reading my notes. And I don't think my eyes ever left the page the whole time I'm up front. It was terrible. It was the worst thing you've ever seen. But, at the end, we have these comment cards, and we flip through the comment cards of kids that say, I'd like to get involved with Crew. This was awesome. And there's a box that says, I accepted Christ. And I find one that says, I accepted Christ. And it happens to be this kid, Austin, who was an atheist. He told me before, yeah, I'm an atheist. I'm just here for the pizza. I'm like, cool, come on over, He's a freshman. He's just checking things out. But afterwards, I'm like, there's no way. That must be a mistake. And so I go talk to him and say, dude, did you accept Christ today? He's like, yeah, I'd never heard that before. Now, this is a kid who grew up in a great home, and he's been around Christians his whole life. And he lives in the area, and he'd never really heard the gospel before. And I'm like, how does that happen? But that story repeated itself over and over again here in the valley, where there are churches everywhere. They just have never really heard the gospel. They've met Christians. They've been ministered to by Christians. They've hung out with Christians. But no one's ever communicated the gospel to them before, that Jesus came. Yes, we're all sinners, and they've heard that. And Jesus came to pay for your sins, and they've heard that. But they kind of think it's a blanket. Jesus came to pay for sins. But that each one of us can trust him to pay for our sins, and that our sins can be blotted out. It's like, wow, how does that work? And so I saw that story repeat itself over and over again while I was here in the valley, and that's local missions. When I had a decision about what to do with my time, it became a no-brainer. I can go to the campus. I can talk to kids. I can build relationships. I can tell people about Christ. And when I think about teenagers, there's a unique thing about teenagers. So I've got a question for you. Okay, everybody sitting here. Could you raise your hand if you accepted Christ before you left high school? If your particular journey was, I accepted Christ before I left high school. Good for you. That is 75%, 75 to 80% of Christians. If we get 100 Christians in a room, 75 to 80% of them, yeah, before I left high school, that's when I made a decision for Christ. And we pour a lot of our efforts in the church into after that. But there's so much that happens before that. A lot of that happens at kids' age, the kids downstairs, and junior high and high school. So many kids are making decisions right there about what they're going to do. Whether they're Christians, if you're parents of teenagers, you know that they're trying to figure out who they are. Same thing is happening in their hearts as Christian hearts and non-Christian hearts. And so when we can be where kids are when they're making those most important decisions in their life, that's gold. It's the best. Ridgeland High School in this area is the #1 mission field in the whole area. That is if I were to say, how do we reach this area, I would put a huge target right there at Ridgeland High School, because so many kids 92% of all the kids in the area go through that school. You have some Christian school kids, you have some homeschool kids, and some other private school kids, but 92% are going to go through that. There is no other place in the entire area where everybody has to go through one place, one location, for 4 years of their lives with their friends. High school, their teenagers are very social. They're just engaging, they're networking. At a time when they're the most spiritually sensitive, they're making decisions about who am I, what do I want to do with my life, right then. They're all in the same place. It's just this gold mine of ministry. And that's how I see high schools in the whole country. That's what we have, these little pockets of society that are taking place right there. And that's what God used these years here at Chattanooga Valley to kind of call me to a lifetime of ministry in this. I went from here and I met a woman, and I moved to Indianapolis. So she took me. Sorry, guys. But it was good. She's a good woman. And we had kids. I've got 4 beautiful kids, 3 teenagers now. One's actually in college now. And then we adopted a daughter, and she's 10. And my role changed a little bit. I did ministry for about 15 years or 17 years in Indianapolis. And then about 5 years ago, I got a call. And he asked, would I come and become, here's my new title, the Director of Innovation for the high school ministry. Director of Innovation. That means ministry is constantly changing. And would you come help us do something different? Now, I'd already made some small group materials that we use. So some of the things that I do now, I live in Orlando, and some of the things I do now are I create the tools that our staff use on the field. Years ago, when you would do evangelism, you might go up to someone and say, hey, do you know Jesus? Can I tell you about him? That'd be the bold way to do it. Or you might say, if you die tonight, do you know if you're going to go to heaven? And they're like, well, I don't know. It'd be a process of me telling you what you should believe. That would be evangelism. Some things have changed, and I need a couple volunteers from the front row. All right, 1, 2, come on up. All right, so I want to show you one way the innovation changes that. Take a handful of those, take a handful of these. Now, these are called snapshot cards. Another way, you might have seen Solarium. They're picture cards. They've got a bunch of pictures. And so when the culture changes, the church has to change with it, or the church dies. If we continue to use methods that worked 50 years ago in ministry, the culture will reject us. And we'll be like, this is how my dad did it, my grandpa did it, we got to keep doing it. This is church. No, we're not doing the same things that we did 2,000 years ago. We're doing the same concepts, but we changed with the culture. Today's culture does not care about God. There's a hole in their heart that is true because that's how they're made, and they need Jesus. Teenagers need Jesus, by the way. They just don't know it. So if you hear anything today, it is teenagers need Jesus. They just don't know it. And that is true of everyone in the culture. They don't realize that what they really need is Jesus. And so instead of our lead foot being, and 50 years ago, actually the culture was in that they did know that Jesus was probably the answer. They were just running from that. Today, the biblical knowledge is so low, they don't really realize Jesus is even in the picture. And so we start with them. So we ask the question, hey, we have these pictures. Show me a picture that best represents what you want from your life. What do you want your life to be like? So I'm asking about them, and these questions get to their hearts. I'm drawing their hearts out, and in our conversation, instead of me just telling them, this is what you should believe, I'm saying, let me hear about you. All right, you got hands, two hands together, why?
I want to have close relationships.
Did you hear that? I'm hearing his heart right now. If I go and tell you this is what you need to know about Jesus, I'm not getting any of this. How about you? He's got a wedding picture, guys. Someday, well, we laugh, but you know what happened is he has good parents, and he recognizes the value of this, and you want good relationships, right? Both these guys want good relationships. That's amazing. Show me a picture of what your spiritual life is like right now. Okay. Tell me about that.
Not that good.
Okay, it's a picture of kind of maybe like a depressed person, maybe sad. Who knows how you interpret it? Pictures are very subjective. Anybody could see anything in them. I mean, we're getting his heart. His heart's coming out. He just admitted, my spiritual life's not really what I want it to be. You don't get that if you just say, this is what you should believe about God. How about you? Do you got anything?
Like the thing that stood out most is like the light bulb.
A light bulb?
I try. It's not very bright.
Yeah.
I try to.
You try to be a light?
I'm also hiding away.
Yeah. You're a little nervous about shining your light, but you want to be that light. That's really good. Show me a picture. Now, think about doing this with non-Christians. They'll have various answers. Show me a picture of what you think God is like. Now, this is again, we're talking about innovation. Why is it important to innovate, to try new things, to figure out how do we talk to this next generation about Jesus? Because if we don't, we will lose them. What do you got?
Beach, peaceful. He's very calming.
Okay.
Father-like, so we feel calming around him.
That's really good. That's really good. And I'm affirming him. I'm telling him what is in your heart is good, even if their answers are not the way I would want them to answer. But God has placed eternity in his heart, and he's seeking it. And he might be finding it in different places, but he's seeking it, and it's good. And I can affirm that, even if we totally disagree, and even if he totally rejects Jesus, I can still affirm this person, and I can help him his heart find Jesus.
He's like he's beautiful.
Okay, this picture of the sky, this row, this beauty. Yeah, he's perfect. That's amazing. Hey, thanks, guys. Have a seat. So what just happened there, you could do with a non-Christian, or you could do that with someone you don't know. And they can begin to, and you can begin to see into their heart. And most people today do not have even that level of exposure of themselves to people on a daily basis. They're not, most of us don't have like, well, how do I feel? What do I think? What do I want from life? And so you start there, and then you say, well, can I share with you what I think about God? And you've already asked them, you've given them an open door, and now you can share. So that's just an example, and you can share with the cards. You can say, this is my picture of God, and this is why, and this is what I know about God, that he loves me, and that he died for me, and that I need to receive him. And their heart is already open. They trust you because of the way you've responded to them when they've opened their hearts. I show you that as a way of saying, this is why I decided, instead of doing field work, working with students, doing outreaches, helping them know Jesus, I've shifted over to doing this innovation work of saying, we have to help other people learn how to share their faith better, learn how to tell people about Jesus better, learn how to have outreaches better, learn how to bring people into the kingdom better. It's crucial. We cannot just keep doing the same things we do over and over again. Some of the things that I've specifically been working on, one is I mentioned this Thrive Studies Bible study material. When we said we need some more Bible study material, what do we do with that? I looked around at a lot of different products that were out there, and so many of them were designed for adults to lead teenagers, which is great. That's usually what we have in a youth group, right? Adults leading teenagers. There's nothing wrong with that. But in Crew, one of the principles we have is that students can lead. And you guys can lead. You can lead your friends spiritually. But not many of the curriculum, much of the curriculum was designed for that. And so it's this heavy introduction, it's adult language, it's talking about with the teenagers or with the students rather than easy, very quick, concise, and practical for the students. And that's what we developed with Thrive Studies. We said, how do we help a sophomore in high school lead a small group with their students, with their friends? And it's been great. We've got people all over the world using it. It's been translated into 6 languages. We have an app. We've got the printouts. It's all free. We want to push it out. As many people can use it as possible because we believe that teenagers can lead their friends spiritually. And again, when you think about Ridgeland High School, it's right there. There are Christians on that campus right now that are the best missionaries on that campus. You couldn't pay someone to be as good of a missionary as they are because they're with their friends 12 hours a day, 8 hours a day, some of them longer. They're in the social networks, the relational networks. They're already plugged in. They're the best missionary there. They speak their language. They have this trust that's been built up over the years. If they're walking with God, their friends know it. They can see a difference in their life. And they can be real about where they're not walking with God, you know. And so you can train a student to do the ministry, but to get a youth pastor in there or something like that, there's just a lot of hurdles they have to get over for the students to trust them. And so I say, let's help students there learn how to share their faith. Let's help them be the best missionaries on their campus. There's a student named Patrick who came to Christ with us when I was in Indiana, and he was a freshman, and he came and his senior buddy was leading from the wrestling team was leading a small group. He got it plugged into that because they would wrestle in his basement after every time. You know, they do the Bible study. They're like, whoa! I think they'd actually watch wrestling too. Like they try to mimic it, but they had a lot of fun, and that's why he joined. He came to Christ as a freshman and started walking with us through his high school career. He went to our conferences. He was at our outreaches. His senior year, he came to me and he said, "Hey, Mark, I want to do something. I want to do something for God at this school, and I don't know what it is." You know, he's leaving. He wants to make an impact. So his friend JT and he came together, and they decided to do an outreach called "I Agree With." And "I Agree With" campaigns, which we've done on college campuses and high school campuses around, was pick a student that's pretty well known, and that was JT, and then just have an outreach where he's just called "I Agree With JT." And you put it on T-shirts, and you put it on the walls, and you put it everywhere, and you don't tell anybody what it's really about. And they say, "What's this about?" And I say, "Well, come check it out." And you come, and you have the event, and so a couple hundred kids show up, and you have the event, and you have food, and you have games and stuff, and then JT shares his testimony about Jesus, and you have all the other students that are saying, "I agree with JT," on that. And then people, and you share the gospel. And so that's what Patrick put together. I didn't have the capacity to do it, but Patrick, he did all the advertising, he gathered all the people, he did all the things, because he wanted to impact the world for Jesus, his world for Jesus. Students can lead if we let them, if we help them. And he works for, I don't know if you're familiar with All Pro Dads, but he came on staff with them. They're a ministry that Tony Dungy has created, and he helps dads now be better dads and help their kids know Jesus. So I love that when we see kids come through. Another thing that happened in his life, which we see often, is he came to Christ as a freshman, and then his family began to change. His dad, who had come to Christ young but didn't really raise his family as a Christian, started going to church with Patrick. His sister, who wasn't a Christian, came to Crew and became a Christian and became a student leader with us. When you reach a family or a teenager, you reach the whole family. The whole family is impacted. So that is my glimpse of student ministry, of local ministry. When I decided at Covenant to see what I could do, that's what happens in local ministry. I would like to take a picture now, jump into Nehemiah. And I need some help. I need some help with Nehemiah. I need some people to read aloud a couple of verses. Can I get any volunteers from the crowd to say, yes, I can vocalize, I can read aloud a couple of verses from Nehemiah? Who do I got? We got one, we got two, we We got 3, we got 4. Okay. Sorry, adults, the teenagers are on it. Okay, I need Nehemiah 1 through 3. Can you grab that one? And then who can get Nehemiah 2, 4 through 5? You got that one? And then who can get Nehemiah 4:10? You got that one? And who can get Nehemiah 6, 15 through 16? You got that one? When you read, I'll point at you or I'll call on you when it's time. Stand up, turn around, yell it to the people. You got it? Whoa, I don't know. 6, 15 through 16, I believe. Nehemiah, you might be familiar with the story. Nehemiah, the people had been exiled from Jerusalem, from Judea, from Israel, and people were starting to come back. And Ezra and Zerubbabel had come back and built the temple. And the temple was now built, but the walls were down. And this is the story of how God used Nehemiah to come back and rebuild the walls of Jerusalem. Local missions is God preparing people for Jesus. Nehemiah came back to build the walls, which is part of preparing Jerusalem for Jesus' coming. When we read about Jesus in the stories, we see the walls, right? In the Bible, the walls are there. And they're there because Nehemiah came and prepared the way. And that's local missions for us. So the first thing is that Nehemiah cared. Can you read Nehemiah 1 through 3? Who's got that?
Oh, I thought I got 6. Sorry.
Okay, that's all right. Why don't you do 1 through 3? Can you stand up and turn around and just belt it out?
The words of Nehemiah, the son of Hakaliah.
Sorry about the big names. Just go with it.
Now it happens in the mouth of Chislev in the 20th year, as I was in Susa, the capital, that Hanani, one of my brothers, came with certain men from Judah. And I asked them concerning the Jews who escaped, who had survived the exile, and concerning Jerusalem. And they said to me, the remnant there in the province who had survived the exile is in great trouble and shame. The wall of Jerusalem is broken down, and its gates are destroyed by fire.
All right, so that's what he heard. His response was he cared. First of all, he cared enough to ask. So the first thing with missions is you have to care. And guys, if we don't get that part right, none of the rest of it matters. If we're not looking around in our community saying what needs to be done and what does God want from me on that, where is the pain, then we've lost. And I was downstairs last night and I saw the ministries that you guys support as a church. And you guys do a lot. You guys care. That's really admirable. I just want to commend you guys about that. That is not always what you see in churches. It's probably part of your growth, is that God is working here among you because you care. Nehemiah cared. Nehemiah, then after he asked, he cried. He wept. He said, God, this is terrible. Things are not going well in my home in Israel. And then he prayed. And he said, God, would you do something? What can I do? What should happen here? And that's where you start with local missions, is you see a problem and you weep. You're emotional about it, or you care, and then you ask God. When I was, this is not exactly local missions related, but it is personal for me. When I was, I'd had kids with my wife, and we had 3 boys. All of them are about a year and a half apart. And they're, if you're a mom with the young boys, you know how crazy that is. But we had always talked about having 4 kids. And we didn't have a plan. They just kept coming, But we didn't know why. But we kept having kids. A little embarrassed over there. What we're talking about. But we'd always talked about adopting. My wife had an adopted sister, and she really had a heart for adoption. I liked the idea. It's a good idea, but I didn't care that much about it. But if we're going to have our kids close together, and if we're going to have 4 of them, we better figure that out, because adoption takes time. And so we started talking about it, and I started praying about it a little bit. And then I started listening to this radio program on Family Life Radio, program, and it happened to be adoption month. And so I'm listening to all these adoption stories on this podcast. And I find myself driving down the road just weeping about children that need a home. And it came to me like, we have a home. Like they're going to grow up without a mom and a dad and no one to care for them and love them. And we have a home. We have brothers for her, you know. He brought me to weeping about it. And I didn't care before that, but he did something in my heart. He did something in my heart that the time was right, and we started the process, and it was actually a long process. We decided to adopt from Ethiopia for a lot of reasons, and it was supposed to be a 2-year process, and 4 years later, they closed the program, and like, oh, you know, the pain of that, and then we jumped to another program in China, finally got Kate. It was 6 years later, but I cannot imagine our family any other way. God created her for us and us for her. And God calls us to care. And if we don't care, we won't take action. And that's the second point, is Nehemiah acted. Who's got Nehemiah 2, 4 through 5? Can you stand up and read aloud? Oh, yeah, excuse me. Oh, no, 4 through 5.
When the king said to me, "What are you requesting?" For I prayed to the God of heaven, and I said to the king, "If it pleases the king and your servants have found favor in this, that you send me to Judah, to the city of my father's grave, that I may rebuild it."
Thank you. So he took action. He asked the king. He was the cupbearer for the king. It was a pretty sweet deal. His position was pretty good. But he said, after weeping, after wrestling, after praying, he said, it's time. And he asked the king, would you send me? Would you send me to fix this problem? Would you send me to help rebuild the walls of Jerusalem, to make Jerusalem what it once was? It'll never be what it once was, but to rebuild it. He had the heart. He took action. He asked. He had personal sacrifice. Again, he was in a pretty plush position, and he went to something that was not that. And the king said yes. He acted. He went. He inspected the walls. He went and he rallied the people. He acted. And when we do local missions, it's one thing to care and say, oh, you know, children are being aborted. That's not good. The people need food. It's another thing to act. And it's important to say here that we can't act on everything. God doesn't say there's a need, everyone should do all the needs, because there's not enough of us to go around and we can't all do. But if we're not willing to act, then we are the wall. We're the problem. We're the short circuit in the system. And so we've got to ask ourselves, what is God calling me to do? And am I willing to say no to the comfort? Like Nehemiah had comfort. He's willing to say, I'm going to forfeit my comfort to go meet the need. And it's not just a need, it's a call. God's calling me to do this. The need's always been there, but now God's engaging me in that mission. And am I going to do that, or am I going to live in my comfort? We all have to wrestle with that. You have to wrestle that with kids. It's uncomfortable to talk about Jesus sometimes, right, with your friends, because they might not be where you want to be. And sometimes it's uncomfortable to make a stand about your faith or about your morals when your friends are going a different direction. It's just uncomfortable. And never put comfort on a pedestal. It will never serve you well. It'll always become your God. Instead, let God be God. When we moved to Orlando, I had 3 boys. They were middle school and going into high school, and we had in Orlando, in Fishers, we had a very strong ministry. I led a very strong ministry with teenagers, and I was really looking forward, and I care about my kids. I was really looking forward to them going through this ministry where I knew that older teenagers were going to disciple them, and older teenagers were going to help them love Jesus. And I just was so excited about seeing that happen. And we got asked to move to Orlando just at that time. And one of the I said no at first, before I prayed about it, because things were going well. It was comfort, and I didn't want to leave. And we came down to Orlando. I eventually said yes. We came down to Orlando, and they did not have anything like that in the schools there. There are some churches, youth groups that were pretty good, but nothing that was like what I'd wanted for them. And they didn't have a crew at their high school, and we really valued that. We wanted them to go to the public high school because we wanted them to learn to be missionaries, to learn to care about people, to learn to talk about their faith, and there wasn't anything like crew there. And that was a little heartbreaking for us. But Dawn, my wife, even though she was homeschooling our daughter and doing a number of other things, decided that God was calling her to take action, to act. And so she went and she found a teacher sponsor at the high school to do the club, and she started a crew ministry there, and she found some college students to come down and engage with the students, and she made that happen, and it was fantastic. By the way, I'm going to plant a seed in Covenant College. There's a gold mine of ministry to be done here. There's a gold mine of ministers there. Guys, this connection, this could be huge, but since you're from Covenant, I'll just tell you, make it happen. So Dawn started that, and the long story short, 3 or 4 years later, there have been 10 students that have come to Christ through that ministry, and there have been many seeds planted, and my kids have been able to see it and be a part of that, and have cared about their friends, and learned how to invite, learned how to share their testimony, learned how to care, and because she acted. If she hadn't acted, wouldn't have happened. She had to give up a number of things. Life was crazy for a long time there, but she acted. And I just want to encourage you guys, if God is laying on your heart to act, even though it is hard, there is good on the other side of that. The third thing that Nehemiah did is Nehemiah struggled. If you've ever been involved with really any aspect of life, but any ministry, you know that struggle is a piece of the pie. It's one of the reasons we don't act, because we know on the other side of action, there's going to be some struggle. Who's got Nehemiah 4:10? Okay.
In Judah it was said, the strength of those who bear the burdens is failing. There is too much rubble. By ourselves we will not be able to rebuild the wall.
So this was the voice of the people. Nehemiah came. He's motivating the people. They're starting to act. They're like, yeah, let's build the wall. Let's do it. Then they start to complain. If you've ever led, you know that this is a piece of the pie. The people are going to complain. There's always something, for good reasons, for bad reasons, whatever. Complaining happens. People complained. There were also some enemies that he faced. Some people that did not want those walls built, because if those walls were built, they would lose power. And so they were they were accusing him of things. They were making fun of him and them. They were plotting against him. The people had to build with one hand and have their sword in the other hand because people might attack. This is very difficult. But that is what you can expect when you do ministry, and that's what they saw. Discouragement is a key weapon in Satan's arsenal. If you find yourself in a place in life where you're trying to do something maybe good, and you're discouraged, just know that discouragement is a key weapon in Satan's arsenal. That's what he uses. So don't think, oh, it's me. Recognize Satan has a plan for you, and it is not God's plan for you. He wants to discourage. Maybe it's no one signs up for your thing. You try to do some kind of good thing, good ministry, and nobody signs up. Maybe a person you're working with, you're discipling, you're working on leaves the faith. They were great, and now they're gone. What happened? That's discouraging. Maybe it's a leader that is leading really well, and you have high hopes for them, but then they morally fall. All of these things happen. I was talking to somebody just the other day about our church's politics. And sometimes there's church politics that goes on that can be discouraging. And funding problems can happen. All kinds of things. You will face problems, no matter what. Because the reason God's called you to step into ministry is because there are problems, and you get to work on those. So the fourth thing is that Nehemiah finished the work. There was a wall. Who's got Nehemiah 6:15 through 16? You got that? Let's hear it.
So the wall was finished on the 25th day of the month of Il, in 52 days. And when all our enemies heard of it, the nations around us were perceived that this work had been accomplished with the help of our God.
And that's the goal. You know, in the end, the wall was built, and the ministry is done, and the event came off without a hitch, and the person comes to Christ, and the family is fed, and the baby is not aborted. These are things that happen when we choose to step into ministry. As you know, ministry is never done, though. Even when the wall was built, Nehemiah had problems. Even when the funding is raised, there's another need for funding to be raised. You know, even when the event is done, well, there's another event around the corner. Until we go home, it'll never be finished. But that's why God's called us to step into it. And so my hope today is not to say, step into more, people. Do it. Come on. Please don't hear that message. That is a message from Satan. But the question of what is God laying on my heart? And then what steps does he want me to take? Those are questions I think we should ask. And I have a practical step that I was like, what can I leave you guys with? And can you guys help? Can I get some help handing these out? Yeah, get those, spread them out, get them in everybody's hands. Actually, could I have one of those? Because I need to see what that is. Okay, thanks. So, a couple of years ago, I heard a speaker speak on this. I was wrestling with the question of what can I leave you guys that's been helpful for me. And so there's two sides of this paper. One of them says 7 things to pray for your lost friends. So on a local ministry level, we always start with prayer. And 7 things to pray for your lost friends. And the other side says 5 ways to impact your campus. And that's a little bit of my desire to see campuses reached, to help you guys if you're in a position to do that. But let me run through real quick. 7 things to pray for your lost friends. I had a neighbor who doesn't know Jesus, and I'm always stuck with how to pray for him. And so this is where it usually goes. I'll drive by his house, and I'll say, Jesus, please bring him to you. Please help him to know you. And then I get stuck. Well, that's kind of the prayer I prayed yesterday, and that's the prayer I prayed last week, and I had conversations with him, but that's kind of the prayer. And I loved this. I heard a talk on this, and I loved this. 7 things to pray for your lost friends. And so I want to ask you guys, encourage you guys to think about 2 or 3 people in your life that don't know Jesus and put them on the list. If you want to, right now, write their names on this paper, but start to pray these things for those 2 to 3 friends. 1, ask that God would reveal himself to them. 2, ask that God would turn their eyes from worthless things. I've never thought about that. This is all these things have biblical references to them. That not only do I really want him to know Jesus, but I want him to turn his eyes away from the things that he's looking at. If they don't know Jesus, then they're focused on something else. Ask them that they would come to their senses. God, let him come to his senses, because that's what coming to Christ is. It's recognizing the truth about the world, about life. Ask God to send others to help. God, I'm not the only one that knows this guy. Help others come, to pray for him, to come along beside him. Ask for boldness for you. I ask for that because I didn't learn how to share my faith until I came to Crew, but I still don't really enjoy it. I enjoy the end results, but it's always difficult to take the steps towards sharing my faith. Because I'm afraid of rejection, because I'm afraid of I'm going to say something wrong. I'm afraid that maybe this will change the relationship somehow, but pray for boldness for you. Ask that God moves quickly. God, would you move quickly in his life? Sometimes that comes in the form of tragedy, and you never want to pray for tragedy, but sometimes that's what causes people to come to know him. And then ask for an open door for the message. God, would you give me the opportunity? Because while I want to talk to this guy, it's been 2 years and I haven't talked to him. Would you give me an open door and help me see that open door? So this has been a really helpful list for me to pray specifically for my neighbor, and I wanted to put it into your hands. On the back, there is 5 ways to impact your campus. And I know that you guys are already doing some work on campuses around here, but there's always room for more. And if God lays it on your heart, these are some ways you could begin if God puts a burden on your heart for Ridgeland High School, for Rossville Middle, for any of these schools. Here are some options. One, prayer walk the school. And that's simply going to the school, walking, and praying. Prayer walking. That was supposed to be funny, but you didn't laugh. But just getting your feet on the campus, I found it so crucial to get your feet on the campus, where people live, where students go to school. You see things, you meet people, just walk around the fields and pray, walk around wherever you can get on the campus. That would be the first step. You can do that yourself. You can start inviting friends. You could do it monthly and just say, you know what, I don't know what to do at Ridgeland High School, but we could go pray. At lunch once a month, let's just go walk around and pray and see if God does anything. Make a top 3 list. So this is where you sit down and say, who are 3 students that I know, 3 faculty that I know at this school, 3 people that I could begin to pray for that don't know Jesus, or I don't know where they are spiritually. And then maybe I can begin to look for opportunities to have conversations with them. But put them on the list, pray for them often, and see what God does with that. Prayer triplets is similar to that. It's the same thing, but you do it with 3 other people. So you realize, hey, there's 3 of us that have a heart for this school. Let's just pray triplet together. Once a week, let's just call each other or get together and do our prayer triplets together and just pray. And I don't have to act. I don't have to do some kind of outreach. I don't have to share my faith. I don't have to do anything. I just have to pray and see if God begins to do something through that. The next one would be start a small group. This is what I did with Josh. The first thing we did was just start a small group. Just get some people together who you know they are believers, they go to that school or near that school, and you can start a core there and just start meeting. Get some mom to make brownies. They come. Believe me, they like food. And then just invite people to that and then that begins to turn into something else. And then the last one is start crew or any Christian group. It really does not matter on your campus. Just start something, because when there's something there are other Christian students that will be looking for that. And again, that is where non-Christians are. 92% of all people in this area. And frankly, if 8% of those are Christians because they're being homeschooled or going to Christian school, then the majority of the non-Christians in the area, let's say 99% of the non-Christians in the area, are going to go through that school. So we can get a core on that campus of believers who are praying for the school, who are reaching out, who are looking for opportunities. It's a gold mine. And so I wanted to give you some opportunities, the ways that you can do that. Maybe your kids are in school at a middle school and you think, you know what, I can start to do 1 or 2 of these. Maybe God will lay something like that on your heart. Teenagers need Jesus. They just don't know it. So I want to thank you guys for giving me the opportunity to talk a little bit today. Thanks for your attention. I appreciate it. Thank you guys for reading and for being up here. Let's give a hand for these teenagers for walking with Jesus. All right. Yes, you're welcome. Why don't you guys stand up and take a bow? No? Okay. Well, that's right. Well, thank you guys. I appreciate your time. Yeah.
Thank you, Lord, for the love and grace that's come from heaven of Jesus Christ. He is our hope, the hope of the world, hope for student ministries. Thank you for Mark, his passion, his integration of the gospel, the love of Christ for people. Help us all as we reach into our world and the place that you have given to us, and to build up your kingdom for lost people to come to you, and together to live as the Church of Jesus Christ in our world. Be with us in the rest of our morning together. In Jesus' name, amen.
Amen.